The chair disappeared. For one impossible second, Hannah Brooks remained suspended in the air before gravity claimed her. She hit the polished marble floor with a sharp crack that echoed beneath the crystal chandeliers of the Grand Astoria ballroom. Several champagne glasses rattled. Then laughter erupted. Not nervous laughter, cruel laughter. "I told you she'd break the chair." "No," another young man sneered, nudging the expensive velvet chair farther away with the tip of his polished shoe. "She's just too fat to sit with us." Phones appeared almost instantly. Someone zoomed in. Someone else whispered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "This is going viral." Heat flooded Hannah's cheeks. Confidential folders burst open across the marble floor, scattering contracts, financial summaries, and sealed merger agreements between the shoes of America's wealthiest families. She ignored the laughter, ignored the cameras. She dropped to her knees and desperately reached for the papers before anyone could read them. No one bent down to help, not a single person, until another pair of shoes entered her trembling field of vision. Black Italian leather, perfectly polished. The ballroom grew strangely quiet. The man crouched without a word. He collected every page with calm, deliberate movements, carefully arranging them into a neat stack before placing them gently into Hannah's shaking hands. Only then did he rise. His expression revealed nothing. His cold gray eyes slowly swept across the billionaires surrounding the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost conversational. "Everyone." A long silence followed. "Stand up." Nobody moved. Then nearly 30 tattooed bodyguards appeared from every entrance to the ballroom. The laughter vanished. The man looked toward the head waiter. "Clear the entire VIP table." Only then did the young heirs begin to understand. Humiliating Hannah Brooks had not been the biggest mistake of the evening. Doing it in front of Adrian Moretti was. Only 15 minutes earlier, Hannah had believed the evening would be simple. Deliver the confidential merger documents, obtain 2 signatures, leave before dessert. That had been the entire assignment. As senior logistics coordinator for Carter Event Management, she rarely attracted attention. She preferred it that way. While other coordinators loved networking with executives and celebrities, Hannah found comfort behind schedules, floor plans, and perfectly organized timelines. If everything ran smoothly, nobody noticed she existed. To her, that was success. She adjusted the black blazer that formed part of the event staff uniform and glanced one final time at the sealed navy folder tucked securely beneath her arm. Emily Carter, her employer, had repeated the instructions 3 times before Hannah left the office. These documents go directly to Nathan Sullivan. No assistants, no lawyers, no exceptions. Hannah had nodded. She never failed with details. Unfortunately, details could not prepare someone for cruelty. The Grand Astoria ballroom glittered beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Politicians, investors, luxury hotel owners, technology founders, and heirs to old fortunes drifted between marble columns, while a string quartet performed quietly in the background. Every guest seemed born into confidence. Hannah felt like she had borrowed hers. She had spent most of her life being reminded that she occupied too much space, too heavy, too noticeable, too ordinary. Years of whispered comments had taught her an invisible survival skill: be useful, stay quiet, and never become the center of attention. Tonight had almost gone according to plan. She located Nathan Sullivan speaking with several sponsors near the VIP platform, but before she could reach him, one of the catering managers rushed toward her. "Hannah, table 14 is missing 2 dietary cards. Could you help for just a minute?" Of course. Helping others had always seemed easier than refusing them. 5 minutes later, the delay proved disastrous. Nathan had already moved to the exclusive VIP section, where access was restricted during the charity auction. Security recognized Hannah's event credentials and allowed her through. That single decision placed her directly beside the table, occupied by some of the country's most privileged young heirs. Brandon Whitmore noticed her first. 33. Perfect tuxedo. Perfect smile. An ego carefully polished by inherited billions. He glanced at Hannah's staff badge before looking slowly up and down her figure. I didn't realize catering upgraded their uniforms. Several people laughed. Hannah offered a polite smile she did not feel. I only need Mr. Sullivan's signature. He'll be back. Brandon casually rested one arm across the empty chair beside him. You've been standing all evening. His tone sounded surprisingly friendly. Sit. For a heartbeat, Hannah hesitated. She should have declined. Instead, believing simple courtesy had finally won over arrogance, she carefully shifted the document folder against her chest and lowered herself toward the chair. The chair vanished. Her stomach lurched. The impact drove the breath from her lungs. Paper exploded across the marble. Someone applauded. Another guest actually whistled. Brandon leaned back, laughing so hard, tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. I told you. Victoria Ashcroft lifted her phone without the slightest hint of shame. This is priceless. Another heir grinned. Someone post it before she starts crying. Hannah's ears rang. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Instead, she crawled across the polished floor, collecting the confidential papers before the sealed tabs opened. Her fingers shook violently. One page slid beneath an expensive shoe. She reached toward it. The shoe deliberately pressed harder. Careful, Brandon said with mock concern. Corporate secrets might be too heavy for you too. Fresh laughter echoed through the ballroom. Hundreds of guests watched. Most looked uncomfortable. None intervened. Hannah swallowed the knot rising painfully in her throat. She refused to cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Then the pressure disappeared from the paper. The expensive shoe stepped away. A different man had entered the circle. Tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed in a midnight black tuxedo, tailored with understated perfection. He neither hurried nor hesitated. He simply crouched beside Hannah and gathered each scattered document with remarkable care, checking every page number before returning the complete stack to her hands. His movements carried an almost unsettling precision. When Hannah finally looked up, she found calm gray eyes meeting hers. Are any pages missing? He asked quietly. She blinked. No. Good. He gave the slightest nod, as though nothing unusual had happened. Then he stood. Only after ensuring Hannah had regained her footing did he turn toward Brandon Whitmore. Silence settled over the ballroom. Brandon forced an amused smile. And who exactly are you supposed to be? The stranger ignored the question. Instead, he looked toward the head waiter, standing frozen nearby. His voice remained calm. Ask everyone seated at this table to stand. Confused glances spread across the room. Nobody moved. Brandon laughed again. I don't take orders from strangers. The stranger reached into his jacket. Not for a weapon, for a phone. He spoke only 6 quiet words. Come inside. VIP ballroom. Right now. Within seconds, every entrance opened simultaneously. Men dressed in immaculate black suits entered with disciplined precision. Some guests recognized the discreet serpent insignia stitched inside their lapels. Faces drained of color. Whispers raced across the ballroom. Moretti security. No, it can't be. Brandon's confident smile began to fade. For the first time that evening, someone at the table looked genuinely afraid. The silence did not last long. It shattered beneath the sharp scrape of Brandon Whitmore's chair as he rose to his feet. He forced an arrogant smile, though everyone close enough could see the tension tightening his jaw. I don't know what little security company you work for, he said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, But you're interrupting a private charity function. The stranger regarded him without expression. I am. The answer was so calm that it unsettled the room more than shouting ever could. Brandon laughed again, trying to reclaim the attention. You think walking in with bodyguards impresses anyone here? No response. The stranger simply extended one hand toward Hannah. The documents. Confused, Hannah instinctively tightened her grip on the folder. They're confidential. I know. His tone carried neither impatience nor authority. Only certainty. I'm making sure they remain that way. Something about the way he spoke dissolved the panic racing through her chest. She carefully handed him the folder. He never opened it. Instead, he checked the damaged seal around the edges. One corner had split during the fall, barely half an inch. His eyes narrowed, almost imperceptibly. Someone had already tried to peek inside. He slowly looked back toward Brandon's table. Who touched these documents? No one answered. Victoria Ashcroft crossed her arms. You can't accuse us of anything. I asked a question. His voice remained almost gentle. Who touched the documents? Again, silence. Across the ballroom, Nathan Sullivan had finally noticed the growing disturbance. The senior investment executive hurried toward the VIP section, accompanied by two board members. Hannah? His eyes widened when he saw the scattered papers and the damaged folder. What happened? Before Hannah could answer, Brandon casually shrugged. Your employee slipped. A few nervous chuckles followed. Nathan looked at Hannah's reddened eyes, then at the phone still recording in Victoria's hand, then at the chair lying several feet away from the table. He understood immediately. His expression hardened. What exactly happened? No one spoke. The stranger answered instead. Your coordinator was assaulted. Several guests gasped. Brandon scoffed. That's a ridiculous exaggeration. No. The stranger finally looked directly into Brandon's eyes. It is a legal description. Those 6 words landed harder than any shouted threat. Nathan carefully accepted the document folder from the stranger and inspected the broken seal. His face lost all color. Oh no. He looked at Hannah. Did anyone read these? I don't think so. You don't think? Nathan's normally composed voice cracked. Hannah, these documents haven't been announced publicly. They contain merger schedules, ownership transfers. He stopped himself before revealing more. The stranger quietly finished the sentence. And evidence capable of moving several $billion in market value. Nathan stared. You know what's inside? I know enough. Brandon folded his arms. So what? Rich people sign papers every day. The stranger slowly turned toward him. Some papers change companies. He paused. Others change prisons. The ballroom became so quiet that the distant string quartet could once again be heard playing across the hall. Victoria suddenly lowered her phone. For the first time that evening, genuine uncertainty flickered across her face. Nathan leaned closer to Hannah. We need to leave. Before either of them could move, another voice interrupted. I don't think she should. Everyone turned. Lucas Grant, Chief Financial Officer of Whitmore Capital, stepped away from the crowd with practiced confidence. Tall, elegant, perfectly controlled. He smiled politely at Hannah. There seems to have been an unfortunate misunderstanding. I believe Miss Brooks should remain here until security confirms those documents haven't been compromised. Nathan frowned. She's coming with me. Lucas's smile never changed. I'm afraid company policy disagrees. The documents belong to the sponsors. If confidential information has leaked, he looked directly at Hannah. Someone must accept responsibility. The implication hung heavily in the air. Hannah felt her stomach tighten. What? Lucas spoke softly enough to sound reasonable. You were the last verified custodian. You dropped the documents. The seals are broken. If information becomes public, he offered an apologetic smile. Our insurers will inevitably begin their investigation with you. The words struck Hannah harder than the public humiliation had. She had spent 12 years building a spotless professional reputation. One accusation could destroy everything. I didn't do anything. I know. Lucas nodded sympathetically. But proving that can sometimes be difficult. The stranger finally moved. Only one step. Yet Lucas instinctively stopped speaking. You prepared that argument very quickly. Lucas blinked once. I'm simply following procedure. No. The stranger studied him carefully. You were waiting for an opportunity. Nathan looked sharply between them. What are you talking about? The stranger ignored him. Instead, he addressed one of the black-suited bodyguards standing nearby. Retrieve every recording made in this ballroom during the last 15 minutes. Several guests exchanged startled looks. Victoria instinctively hid her phone behind her back. The bodyguard spoke into a concealed earpiece. Within seconds, more security personnel quietly dispersed through the ballroom. Lucas's composure cracked ever so slightly. This is outrageous. Those recordings are private property. The stranger nodded. They are, and they'll remain private until law enforcement requests them. Brandon frowned. Law enforcement? The stranger's eyes remained fixed on Lucas. If Miss Brooks is about to be accused of corporate espionage, then every second of video becomes evidence. Lucas's confident smile disappeared completely. Hannah noticed it. So did Nathan. For the first time that evening, someone besides herself looked frightened. Then the ballroom doors opened once more. An elderly woman entered, surrounded by discreet security. Elegant silver hair, impeccable navy evening gown. Every major donor immediately recognized her. Evelyn Moretti, chairwoman of the Moretti Foundation, one of the most influential philanthropists in America. She surveyed the room once before her eyes settled on the stranger. Her expression softened. There you are. Then she turned toward the frozen crowd. I'm terribly sorry. My grandson dislikes seeing innocent people mistreated. A wave of realization swept through the ballroom. Faces drained of color. Whispers erupted from every direction. Grandson, Moretti, my God. Brandon slowly looked back at the man standing only a few feet away. His confidence evaporated. You. The stranger finally answered the question Brandon had asked minutes earlier. My name, he adjusted one cuff with effortless composure, is Adrian Moretti. No one laughed anymore. No one spoke for several long seconds. The silence felt heavier than the music. Brandon Whitmore's face had gone almost white. Everyone in New York's financial elite knew the Moretti name. Officially, the family owned luxury hotels, private investment firms, shipping companies, and charitable foundations stretching across 3 continents. Unofficially, people simply avoided asking how the empire had been built. Adrian Moretti rarely appeared in public. When he did, people listened. Brandon forced himself to laugh. So, you're Adrian Moretti. He spread his hands with exaggerated confidence. Even if that's true, you can't storm into a private gala and threaten guests. I haven't threatened anyone, Adrian replied evenly. I've preserved evidence. Lucas Grant stepped forward, before Brandon could answer. Mr. Moretti, surely this misunderstanding doesn't require such drama. Adrian regarded him for a moment. You're the chief financial officer at Whitmore Capital. Lucas smiled politely. I am. You've been with the company 11 years. That's correct. You oversee compliance, among other responsibilities. Adrian gave a faint nod. So compliance interests you. Lucas hesitated. Naturally. Excellent. Adrian turned toward Nathan Sullivan. May I see the folder? Nathan handed it over without protest. This time, Adrian opened it. The room instinctively leaned closer. Inside were merger agreements, valuation reports, banking schedules, ownership charts, and several pages marked confidential. He flipped through them without appearing to read. Then he stopped. One page was missing. Not torn. Removed. His thumb rested on the empty binder clip. Mr. Sullivan. Nathan's heartbeat seemed visible beneath his collar. Yes? How many pages were originally in this file? Nathan answered immediately. 48. Adrian counted again. 47. The ballroom erupted into whispers. Hannah stared at the folder in disbelief. No. She took a hurried step forward. I checked everything before I left the office. Nathan counted for himself. His expression changed instantly. He's right. There is a missing page. The realization struck Hannah like ice water. Her breathing became shallow. I didn't lose it. I know I didn't. Lucas sighed sympathetically. Miss Brooks, please, don't panic. These things happen. The words sounded comforting, yet something about them felt rehearsed. Adrian noticed. So you expected a missing page? Lucas looked surprised. I beg your pardon? You accepted the loss remarkably quickly. Lucas folded his hands. I'm simply remaining rational. No. Adrian closed the folder. You're remaining prepared. Nathan looked sharply at Lucas. What exactly is going on? Lucas answered without hesitation. If confidential financial information has disappeared, every person who handled the documents becomes part of the investigation. Brandon immediately seized the opportunity. Exactly. He pointed toward Hannah. She dropped everything. Maybe she slipped one page into her purse before making a scene. Gasps spread through the crowd. Hannah stared at him. You know that's not true. Brandon shrugged. Can you prove it? Her hands trembled. She couldn't. Adrian quietly removed a white handkerchief from his pocket and wrapped it around the damaged folder before handing it to one of his security officers. Fingerprint preservation. Lucas blinked. What? No one touches this again. The security officer nodded and disappeared. Lucas's calm expression tightened almost imperceptibly. You seem very interested in a corporate investigation. I dislike dishonest ones, Adrian answered without looking at him. Across the ballroom, Evelyn Moretti had been silently observing every face. She suddenly addressed the hotel's general manager. Lock every exit. Several guests protested immediately. You can't detain us. I have another gala to attend. My driver is waiting. The manager looked uncertain. Then Adrian spoke. No one is detained. If anyone wishes to leave, he paused. They'll first allow security to verify that they aren't carrying confidential corporate property. Nobody moved. A single missing sheet of paper had suddenly become the most valuable object in the room. Nathan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His face tightened. It's the legal department. He answered immediately. What? A long silence followed. Then his expression collapsed. When? More silence. I understand. He slowly lowered the phone. Every eye remained fixed on him. Our legal servers, he swallowed, were breached 12 minutes ago. Shock rippled through the ballroom. 12 minutes? That's impossible. Nathan looked at Adrian. The hackers searched for exactly one project, the merger. Every executive present understood what that meant. Someone already knew the documents were moving tonight. Someone had been waiting. Lucas quietly removed his glasses and cleaned them with a silk cloth. Almost too calmly. Adrian noticed again. So? Lucas replaced the glasses. It appears the theft has already occurred. Brandon nodded eagerly. Exactly. He looked directly at Hannah. Security should search her. The accusation hit harder than before. Several guests exchanged uncertain looks. Others nodded. From a distance, Hannah certainly appeared to be the easiest suspect. A logistics coordinator, ordinary salary, access to confidential paperwork. Adrian looked toward Hannah. "Do you consent?" She lifted her chin despite the tears threatening her composure. "Yes. I have nothing to hide." Without another word, one of Evelyn Moretti's female security officers escorted Hannah into a nearby private lounge. The ballroom waited. 5 minutes passed. No one spoke. Finally, the officer returned. Nothing. No documents. No electronic storage devices. No cameras. No recording equipment. Brandon frowned. She could have hidden it somewhere. Lucas remained thoughtful. Or passed it to someone. Adrian slowly turned. An interesting theory. Lucas nodded. "It deserves consideration." "It certainly does." Adrian reached into his jacket. This time, he removed a small black device no larger than a car key. He placed it gently onto the nearest table. Nathan recognized it immediately. "That's a signal detector," Adrian finished. "It detects unauthorized wireless data transfers." Several executives stiffened. The moment Hannah fell, Adrian continued, "My security team automatically activated ballroom surveillance." He pressed one button. A small light flashed green. At exactly 8:43 p.m., he looked directly at Lucas. A hidden transmitter inside this room uploaded encrypted financial data to an offshore server. The room froze. Nathan whispered, "Someone scanned the missing page." "Precisely," Adrian answered. "The page wasn't stolen to keep. It was stolen to copy." Every face turned toward Lucas. His composure finally cracked, only for a fraction of a second. But Adrian saw it. So did Evelyn. Neither said a word. Not yet. Because Adrian wasn't interested in exposing the thief. He wanted the architect. And somewhere beyond this ballroom, someone already believed the plan had succeeded. The ballroom remained locked in absolute silence. Nobody wanted to be the first person to speak. Nobody wanted to become the next target of Adrian Moretti's attention. Adrian picked up the signal detector and slipped it back into his jacket. The data transfer ended 43 seconds after Miss Brooks fell. He looked around the room. That timing wasn't an accident. Nathan Sullivan slowly exhaled. "You think someone created the humiliation to distract everyone while the page was copied?" "I don't think." Adrian's voice remained calm. "I know." He turned toward one of his security officers. "Bring me the ballroom recording." A tablet was placed in his hand less than a minute later. Every security camera in the hotel had already been synchronized. Adrian tapped the screen. The recording appeared on the ballroom's enormous projection display, originally prepared for the evening's charity presentations. The footage rolled backward. 8:42:51. Hannah entered the VIP section, carrying the Navy folder. 8:43:07. Brandon invited her to sit. 8:43:10. The chair disappeared. The room watched in uncomfortable silence as Hannah struck the marble floor once again. Then Adrian slowed the playback. Watch the table. Not Hannah. Not Brandon. The table. The image zoomed in. While nearly everyone focused on Hannah's humiliation, one person quietly leaned forward. Lucas Grant. His hand disappeared beneath the edge of the table for less than 3 seconds. When it emerged, a single folded sheet of paper rested beneath his dinner menu. The ballroom collectively inhaled. Nathan stared at the screen. "My God." Lucas immediately shook his head. "That proves nothing. It proves opportunity," Adrian corrected. "But not guilt." Lucas seized on the distinction. "Exactly. I moved my menu. That's all." Several guests nodded. The explanation sounded plausible. Adrian seemed unconcerned. "I agree." Lucas blinked. "You agree?" The video alone changes nothing. Relief briefly crossed Lucas's face. Then Adrian continued. But evidence is never collected alone. He looked toward another member of his security team. The ultraviolet photographs. The ballroom lights dimmed. Another series of images appeared on the projection screen. Invisible fluorescent powder glowed bright blue across several objects. Nathan frowned. What am I looking at? The document folder, Adrian explained. Our legal department protects highly confidential contracts with an invisible forensic powder. If someone removes a page, the powder transfers to their fingers. Several executives instinctively looked at their own hands. Lucas did not. He kept both hands hidden behind his back. Adrian noticed. So did Evelyn. Interesting. Adrian spoke softly. Mr. Grant appears reluctant to show us his hands. Lucas finally brought them forward. Calm, steady, clean. There. No powder. Nathan frowned. Adrian smiled faintly. I wasn't looking for powder. Before anyone understood, Adrian stepped forward. With one swift movement, he gently removed Lucas's expensive wristwatch. Lucas reacted instantly. What are you doing? Adrian turned the watch over. A nearly invisible blue residue covered the underside of the leather strap. The ballroom erupted. Lucas lunged for the watch. A bodyguard intercepted him effortlessly. You planted that, Lucas shouted. You planted it. Adrian ignored the accusation. Instead, he pressed a tiny button hidden beneath the watch clasp. A nearly microscopic memory card slid into his palm. Nobody breathed. Nathan whispered, No. Adrian handed the memory card to one of his cybersecurity specialists. Check it. The technician inserted it into a secure reader. Within seconds, financial documents appeared across the giant screen. Exactly one page. The missing page. Every number, every signature, every ownership transfer. Copied perfectly. Nathan staggered backward. It really was stolen. Lucas's face lost every trace of composure. You don't understand. I was trying to protect everyone. Brandon looked at him in disbelief. What are you talking about? Lucas laughed. Not confidently. Desperately. You still think this was about one merger? He shook his head. You idiots. The merger was only the key. Adrian's expression sharpened. The key to what? Lucas looked toward the ballroom doors, toward the dark windows beyond, almost as if he expected someone to arrive. They're already gone. Who? Adrian asked. Lucas smiled bitterly. The people you should actually fear. At that exact moment, every light inside the ballroom went out. The chandeliers vanished. The projection screen died. Darkness swallowed the room. Women screamed. Several guests dropped to the floor. Within 2 seconds, Adrian's bodyguards formed a protective circle around Hannah, Evelyn, and Nathan. Emergency lights flickered on. Red, dim, disturbing. The ballroom doors burst open. A frightened hotel employee stumbled inside. Mr. Moretti. He was barely able to breathe. The server room. It's burning. Nathan froze. Our backup servers. The employee nodded. Someone set them on fire. Every digital copy, every surveillance archive, every financial record connected to tonight's merger. Gone. Or so someone wanted them to believe. Adrian calmly checked his watch. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not because of the fire, because it had happened exactly when he expected. He looked directly at Lucas. I was wondering how long it would take your employer. Lucas frowned. My employer? I know you didn't design this operation. Adrian stepped closer. You executed it. You followed instructions. But men like you never give orders. Lucas remained silent. Adrian continued. The person behind this conspiracy has spent months manipulating powerful families, creating false rivalries, engineering financial collapses. And tonight, using Hannah Brooks as the perfect scapegoat. Hannah stared at him. Me? Adrian finally turned toward her. For someone they believed no one would defend. His voice softened. You became the safest person to blame. Her eyes filled with tears. Not from humiliation this time, from realization. The entire evening, the mockery, the missing page, the accusation, none of it had truly been about her appearance. She had simply been chosen because people assumed no one important would ever stand beside her. They had been catastrophically wrong. At that same moment, Adrian's phone vibrated. He answered immediately. One of his intelligence officers spoke rapidly. Adrian listened without interrupting. When the call ended, his expression grew colder than anyone in the room had yet seen. Nathan swallowed. What happened? Adrian looked toward the burning skyline, visible through the ballroom windows. The fire was only the distraction. He slipped the phone back into his pocket. The real target, he looked directly at Hannah, is your office. The convoy reached Carter Event Management in less than 12 minutes. 4 black SUVs blocked both ends of the street. By the time Adrian stepped out, his security team had already sealed the building. Blue and red emergency lights reflected across the glass facade. Firefighters rushed through the lobby. Smoke still drifted from the upper floors. Emily Carter stood barefoot on the sidewalk, wrapped in a gray emergency blanket. The composed businesswoman, who had negotiated billion-dollar contracts without flinching, looked utterly shaken. The moment she saw Hannah, relief flooded her face. Hannah! She hurried forward and embraced her tightly. Thank God you're safe. Hannah's voice trembled. Emily, what happened? Emily slowly pulled away. They knew exactly where to go. They ignored accounting. They ignored payroll. They ignored the executive offices. She swallowed hard. They went straight to the secure archive. Nathan looked toward Adrian. Someone knew the physical files still existed. Adrian nodded. They weren't searching. They were recovering something. A fire investigator approached, carrying a warped metal storage box. We found this inside the archive room. Emily's face paled. My document safe. The investigator shook his head. It wasn't forced. It was opened correctly. Silence settled over the group. Nathan frowned. Only 3 people knew the combination. Emily looked at him. You, myself, and... Her eyes slowly drifted toward Hannah. The unfinished sentence hurt more than if she had spoken it aloud. Hannah felt her chest tighten. You can't believe I... Emily immediately shook her head. No, I don't. But someone wanted us to. Adrian remained silent. His attention was fixed on the scorched steel safe. He crouched beside it. The lock showed no damage. No pry marks. No drilling. Professional. Almost elegant. He ran one finger lightly across the handle, then looked toward one of his forensic specialists. Prints? The specialist nodded. Several, but one set was deliberately cleaned. Adrian stood. They wanted us to notice the missing fingerprints. Nathan frowned. Why? Because people who erase fingerprints. Adrian answered quietly. Usually leave something else behind. He turned the handle again. A faint scraping sound echoed inside the empty safe. Not metal. Paper. One technician carefully removed the inner panel. Hidden between 2 steel plates was a small folded envelope, untouched by the fire. Emily stared. I've never seen that before. Adrian opened it. Inside lay a handwritten note. Only one sentence. Thank you for protecting the wrong file. No signature. No fingerprint. No watermark. Just 8 words. Nathan whispered, We've been chasing the wrong evidence. Adrian folded the note carefully. Exactly. The missing merger page was never the objective. Emily looked confused. Then what was? Adrian turned toward Hannah. "The folder you carried." She blinked. "What about it? You believed you were delivering one confidential project. You weren't." He handed the note to Nathan. The merger documents were camouflage. The real target traveled inside the same folder. Hannah tried to remember every moment from earlier that day, packing the folder, checking the seals, leaving the office. Nothing had seemed unusual. Then something surfaced. There was. She hesitated. A second envelope. Everyone looked at her. It wasn't marked confidential. It was plain white. I assumed it belonged with the merger documents. Nathan's expression changed instantly. The foundation audit. Emily closed her eyes. Oh no. Hannah frowned. What audit? Emily answered quietly. 6 months ago, our accounting software detected irregular donations flowing through several charitable foundations. Nathan continued. At first, we believed they were bookkeeping errors. They weren't. They formed a laundering network. Adrian listened without interrupting. Emily took a slow breath. The audit traced millions of dollars through shell charities before disappearing into offshore investment funds. Nathan finished the thought. One of those foundations belonged to the Whitmore family, and another, Emily looked uneasily toward Adrian, claimed to have business ties with the Moretti Foundation. Hannah stared at Adrian. So people thought. They wanted a war. Adrian completed the sentence. They wanted the Moretti family blamed. Everything suddenly aligned. The public humiliation. The missing page. The copied documents. The fire. Every move had been carefully designed. Not merely to steal financial information, but to ignite a conflict between two of America's most powerful financial empires. Nathan slowly exhaled. If you'd believed my company framed yours, and we'd believed your company leaked ours. Emily nodded. The markets would have collapsed. Billions erased overnight. Adrian looked through the broken windows toward the flashing emergency vehicles. They almost succeeded. His phone vibrated. This time the message came from his cybersecurity division. He read it once, then handed it to Nathan. Nathan's eyes widened. Our servers weren't breached. No, Adrian replied. They were mirrored. They copied everything. They didn't destroy evidence. They duplicated it, Emily whispered. So whoever planned this still has every file, and now believes we're blind. Adrian's expression remained unreadable. Good. Nathan stared. Good? Adrian slipped the phone back into his pocket. The greatest mistake an intelligent criminal can make is believing they've already won. For the first time since the nightmare had begun, Hannah studied him instead of the chaos surrounding them. Every decision he made seemed measured. He never raised his voice, never panicked, never reacted emotionally. He simply stayed 3 moves ahead. She quietly approached him. I need to ask you something. He looked at her. When everyone laughed, why did you help me? He answered without hesitation. Because everyone else didn't. She waited. He smiled faintly. I've spent my entire life watching powerful people decide who deserves dignity. I've never agreed with them. The words settled deep inside her heart. Not because they sounded romantic, because they sounded true. Before Hannah could respond, another black SUV stopped beside the building. One of Adrian's intelligence officers stepped out, carrying a sealed tablet. Sir, we identified the final recipient. Adrian accepted the tablet. A satellite image filled the screen. An isolated private estate outside Manhattan. Below the image appeared one name. Victoria Ashcroft. Nathan frowned. Brandon's friend? The intelligence officer shook his head. No, his employer. Adrian slowly locked the screen. So that's where the architect has been hiding. He looked toward the waiting convoy. It's time to end this. 6 months later, the Grand Astoria ballroom looked exactly as it had on the night Hannah Brooks believed her career, and her dignity, had ended. The crystal chandeliers still shimmered. The marble floor still reflected the golden light. The orchestra still played softly as New York's most influential families gathered for another national charity gala. Yet the atmosphere had changed. Not because of the decorations. Because of the guest list. Brandon Whitmore's family name no longer appeared among the sponsors. Whitmore Capital had collapsed, following multiple federal indictments for securities fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Lucas Grant had accepted a plea agreement after providing thousands of encrypted financial records to federal investigators. His testimony had exposed an international laundering network that stretched across shell corporations, fraudulent charities, and offshore accounts in 5 countries. Victoria Ashcroft, the true architect of the conspiracy, had fled the United States only days before authorities issued an arrest warrant. She was now the subject of an international investigation. For months, financial news channels had analyzed only one question. How had the conspiracy failed? Very few people knew the answer. It had failed because one ordinary woman had refused to let go of a folder, and because one extraordinary man had refused to let her stand alone. Inside the ballroom, conversations gradually faded as the master of ceremonies approached the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome tonight's principal benefactors. The doors opened. Several distinguished guests entered. Then, for the second time that evening, silence swept across the room. Adrian Moretti walked inside. He wore another perfectly tailored black tuxedo. Confident, calm, completely indifferent to the attention surrounding him. But this time, he was not alone. Hannah Brooks walked beside him, not behind him, not carrying folders, not wearing an employee's uniform. She wore a deep emerald evening gown that complemented her graceful curves instead of hiding them. Her shoulders were no longer hunched. Her eyes no longer searched the floor. Months earlier, she had entered this room hoping no one would notice her. Tonight, every eye followed her. The whispers sounded different now. That's Hannah Brooks, the woman from the gala. The investigator who uncovered the laundering scheme. The woman Adrian Moretti personally protected. As they approached the head table, the guests already seated quietly stood. Every one of them. Not because Adrian expected it, because respect demanded it. Hannah paused. She recognized the exact spot where she had fallen 6 months earlier. For a brief moment, old memories returned. The laughter, the cameras, the humiliation. She unconsciously slowed her steps. Adrian noticed immediately. Without saying anything, he offered his arm, just as he had offered his hand on the night they first met. She accepted. Not because she needed rescuing, because she trusted him. He leaned slightly toward her. So, do you still think this room belongs only to important people? She smiled. I finally realized something. What? Dignity was never something they had the power to give me. She glanced around the ballroom. They only convinced me I didn't already have it. For the first time that evening, Adrian smiled openly. I was hoping you'd discover that. The audience applauded as they reached the head table. Evelyn Moretti rose first. She embraced Hannah warmly before turning toward the guests. There are many successful people in this room. She paused. But success without character is only expensive failure. Her words echoed throughout the ballroom. Several people lowered their eyes. Others applauded. Hannah felt something she had never experienced before. Not pride. Peace. She no longer cared whether every person in the room approved of her. She only cared that she no longer needed their approval. Later that evening, after the speeches had ended, Hannah and Adrian stepped onto the quiet terrace, overlooking Manhattan's glittering skyline. The city lights stretched endlessly beneath them. It still feels unreal, Hannah admitted. Everything changed because someone pulled away a chair. Adrian looked across the skyline. No. He gently shook his head. Everything changed because everyone else looked away. You didn't. She looked at him. Neither did you. A comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Hannah laughed softly. Can I ask you one last question? You've already asked several. And you've answered all of them. So ask another. She studied him for a long moment. That night, when you ordered the entire VIP table cleared, were you protecting the documents? Or protecting me? Adrian's answer came without hesitation. The documents could have been replaced. He turned to meet her eyes. You couldn't. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Hannah slipped her hand into his. The city continued to buzz below. Traffic flowed. Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Life moved forward. But for two people who had found each other because of one cruel act and one courageous decision, the future suddenly felt remarkably peaceful. If there is one lesson this story hopes to leave behind, it is this. A person's worth is never measured by appearance, status, or the opinions of those who mock them. True strength belongs to the people who choose compassion when everyone else chooses cruelty. And sometimes, changing a life begins with something as simple as refusing to look away when everyone else does. Thank you for spending your time with Adrian and Hannah's story. If this journey touched your heart, please consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who could use a reminder that kindness is never weakness. Subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories of courage, justice, and hope. And before you go, we'd love to hear from you. If you had been in that ballroom on the night Hannah fell, would you have stood up to help her? Or would you have remained silent like everyone else?